Hey everyone, for today's video I'll be guiding you over how to build Flins, who's the best electro DPS in the game. Starting off with his kit, in short, his skill enhances and infuses his normal attacks with electro. It also enhances his skill into a different skill that, when used, lets him use his mini ultimate that costs a lot less energy than his regular ultimate. He can also just use his regular ultimate if he doesn't use his enhanced skill, but this will typically result in a DPS loss even if you have enough ER, aka around 200% ER, to consistently use it. Also, for his talents to provide him with 14% more lunar charge damage and 160 more EM, he's gonna want 2000 attack. He's also gonna want to be paired up with another moon sign character if he wants to do 20% more lunar charge damage, and if he wants to more than double his mini ultimate's damage. Anyways, for his rotation, you'll simply want to use his skill, then use his enhanced skill, then use his mini ultimate. You're gonna want to repeat this as many times as you can. If he's at C0, he'll be able to repeat it 2 times, but he'll be able to repeat it 3 times if he's at C1. And if you want to use his big ultimate, all you'll need to do is build him with around 200% ER and use his ultimate right after you use his skill. Here's how to save big when topping up for Genshin Impact's 6.3 banners. Lubar.gg has a limited discount where the 6,480 Genesis Crystal Bundle is only $70 for a week starting December 23rd. They also have a bunch of other discounts on different bundles like the all-in-one bundle and the guaranteed bundles. They also have a 10% off for new users coupon and a 5 and a 3% off for returning users coupon. To save on your top-ups, go to loopbar.gg, choose a bundle, put your account information, then click top up now. Then select your payment method, add or use a coupon code, then click pay now. In a couple of minutes, your discounted bundle should arrive. Now, loopbar.gg is trusted by creators like Genshin Impact and Gopa Certified, and that has a 4.9 rating on Trustpilot alongside a bunch of 5-star reviews. So if you want to save when topping up, go to loopbar.gg by clicking the link in the pinned comment or description. For his skill priorities, you're gonna want to level up his ultimate, then his character level, then his skill. This is because his ultimate is where the majority of his damage comes from. His character level increases his lunar charge damage because lunar charge damage scales off of a character's level, and ascending him provides him with a decently large crit damage boost. And his skill does a minor but considerable amount of damage, whereas his normal attacks are pretty insignificant. For his stats, he's gonna want at least 2000 attacks so that he can get a 14% lunar reaction damage bonus and 160 EM, but 2200 attack if he's at C4 so that he can get 220 EM instead of 160. He's also gonna want to have your typical 1:2 crit rate to crit damage ratio, which means that he's gonna want 2% crit damage for every 1% crit rate you have. For his EM stats, they won't be as important as his crit and attack percentage, so he doesn't really need to have an exact and necessary amount, but he is gonna want to be ran with his proper EM providing teammates like Sucrose, Inefa, and C1 Aino if you don't have Colombina. He'd like for his supports to run the instructor set. He'd appreciate some EM substats, and he'd want enough attack to get his 160 EM from his talents. Now for his ER, he's gonna want around 130% ER, but he's gonna want around 15% less ER if he's running Fischl, Kuki, or Auroron instead of Inefa, and around 10% more ER if he has his C1. For his relics, he's gonna want the unveiling stats because it provides an 80 elemental mastery bonus for its 2-piece bonus, and a 30% crit rate bonus for its 4-piece bonus, which are really valuable stats for Flins. He can also use the Marushise Hunter set if he's running Furina as his Hydra applicator, and if he's running a healer because it provides a 36% crit rate bonus for its 4-piece bonus if his HP consistently fluctuates. You can also use the Gilded Dream set as an alternative because it provides a bunch of EM and attack percentage, 2 stats that are really valuable to Flins. For his main stats, he's gonna want attack percentage over EM for his sands and goblets, and crit for his circlets. For his substats, he's gonna want to meet his ER requirements, then crit, then attack percentage, then EM. For his weapons, he's gonna want his signature because it provides a standard crit rate bonus for its main stat, a powerful lunar charge damage bonus, a decent crit damage bonus, and a ton of energy, which will increase his DPS by around 24% more than the Prospector's shovel, aka his best free-to-play alternative. For other alternatives, you can simply use any weapon that provides a standard crit boost as its main stat because they increase his DPS by around 10%. For 4-star options, you can use the Deathmatch, the Ballet of Fjords, or the Ohanashi since they increase his DPS by around 4%. You can also use the Favonius Lance or the Missive Windspear, although they'll be slightly worse than the Prospector's shovel. For his teams, he'll really only work in lunar charge teams, so he's gonna want a Hydra applicator Hydro-Applicator, a Flex slot, and an Electro character to provide him with a ton of energy, with one of these characters being a moon sign character. For his Hydro-Applicators, Colombina will be his best because she can increase lunar reaction damage, do powerful lunar charge sub DPS, and she can act as the moon sign character. You can also use Aino since she provides EM and increases lunar charge damage with her constellations, and she can act as the moon sign character as well. For other alternatives, any good Hydro-Applicator like Jingchuo, Furina, and Yelan would be relatively as good, since Yelan and Furina's damage bonuses don't contribute to lunar charge damage, so they're not much better than Jingchuo. For your flex slot, he's gonna want Sucrose since he can shred electro resistances and provide EM, but you can also use other res shredders like Zhongli or Ceilonin, or attack buffers like Bennett or Kuki or Ayansan. For his electro character, he's gonna want Nefa because she does powerful lunar charge damage. She can increase lunar charge damage, provide EM, provide a shield, and she can act as the moon sign character. He can also use Fischl since she can provide a massive attack boost when she's paired up with a Hexray character like Sucrose. She can do a ton of electro sub DPS and provide a bit more energy than other electros. You can also use Auroron as a decent sub DPS alternative. For his constellations, his C1 reduces the cooldown of his enhanced skill and it provides him with more energy, which will allow him to do one more mini ultimate and will increase his DPS by around 22%. For his C2, it reduces the enemy's electro resistance by 25% when the moon sign is of the ascendant gleam level, and it lets him do an extra instance of lunar charge damage when he uses his normal attack after using his enhanced skill, which will increase his DPS by around 24%. For his C4, it gives him a 20% attack boost and it upgrades his talents so that he now needs 2200 attack so that he can get 220 elemental mastery, which will increase his DPS by around 14%. For his C6, it elevates his lunar charge damage by 35% and it teams his lunar charge damage by 10%, which is a multiplicative amplifying effect that will increase his DPS by around 73%. For my investment recommendations, you're gonna want his C1, then his C2, then his R1. This is because even though his R1 increases his DPS more than his C1 on paper, his R1 has plenty of alternatives, meaning that if you have an alternative for his R1, which you most likely have, well then his C1 will provide more value. And then if you can afford to get another investment, well then going for his C2 would be best because it increases his DPS by more than his R1. Now should you pull for Flins? Well, Flins is a powerful but not really versatile DPS since he heavily relies on Nefa and Colombina to reach meta levels of DPS, but he is versatile enough to still be viable with free-to-play and powerful alternatives like Fischl and Aino, and his best in slot res shredder is also a free-to-play character, Sucrose. Thus, if you have Colombina and Nefa and you want a meta DPS, well then I definitely recommend summoning on Flins. And if you have his free-to-play teammate and are okay with summoning on an only viable DPS, well then I'd also recommend summoning on Flins, but I would recommend saving for Nefa and Colombina. Anyways, that's all I've got for today. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Goodbye.